So, hello and welcome, guys. Cyber Diaries episode number 20. We have in our house Rene from Kada Search. So, first of all, welcome, Rene.
Thank you, Morris. Thank you for having me.
I guess, first of all, let's to start with, I guess, it's highly unlikely that someone doesn't know who Rene is, but just in case there's a few people who missed or never met Rene, if you can just briefly explain a bit of your maybe career history, Rene, how you ended up in cybersecurity, and then I guess how and how was Kada Search born?
Okay. Yeah, sure. So originally, as you can hear, I'm from South Africa, and I came to the UK. I came from a sales background, and I arrived in the UK, and I think I went through a similar process than what most candidates went through. I was approached by recruiters, and I was talked down to. I was pretty much, told I don't have enough experience to further my career within the UK. I don't have any experience in the UK. All the general stuff that you're used to hearing from recruiters. And I basically got an understanding that if that's the basic standard of recruitment in the UK, that I think I can do that better. And that's pretty much how I found myself within recruitment. Most people that do recruitment will tell you that they've sort of fallen into it. It's not something that you would choose. Most cyber folks, they go to university, they've got a clear route of where they want to be in a couple of years. I think most recruiters, they sort of stumble into recruitment. It's a really tough industry to tell you the honest truth. My first couple of engagements in recruitment firms were very toxic. It was high KPIs, sort of environments where you have a TV screen on the wall, and your expectation is that you need to make 3 hours worth of calls a day, and that's being monitored. Every call's being monitored, and there's no real interaction, no real human interaction. It's not, I didn't really want to stay in recruitment. And long story short is I eventually ended up at Intesso, which is a really good firm. I started working for my boss at the time, a guy called Ryan Surrey. And that to me is really where my recruitment journey started, I would say. I'd say anything before that, it was maybe hit and miss. Because a lot of the recruitment companies that I had worked for weren't specialists in the cyber field. I used to do cybersecurity, but it wasn't on a daily basis. I would some days do sales, some days do cybersecurity, etc., etc. But when I joined Intesso, I sat down with Ryan and Joe at the time, and Jamie, of course, all of the directors, and we decided that I was going to look after or develop the blue teaming for Intesso. So ultimately, do SOC stuff, focus more on entry to middle, and then obviously do some higher end hires as well, like director, head of security operation. I was really, really successful in building out a name within Intesso and building out a market within the UK, which I'm really, really grateful for, because Intesso as a whole, their approach was a human-centric one. So it was, I don't care how many calls you make a day. I don't care, how many people you speak to a day, but what we expect of you is that the people that you do make contact with, whether those be candidates or clients, those need to be a high focus and a human-centric focus. And that's where I actually really started enjoying recruitment, because it gave me back a passion of being able to help people. And I think I've kicked down quite a few doors, especially on the junior side, letting quite a lot of people into the industry. I would say in 22, I think I placed about 50, 60 junior candidates into the UK market, first time. And for me, that was it was really awesome. It was really great to see and have the opportunity to actually help shape people's lives. So let's fast forward a couple of years. You know, I've come to a certain stage in my life. I'm not a youngster anymore. I'm 44 this year. So, you know, as much as I love the environment in Intesso and the opportunity, I felt that it was my time to sort of branch off and try and do it on myself. And so, Kada Search was born. And you know, I would say my main motivation for starting a business is not to become a rich man or build a massive agency. What I'm looking to achieve long term is a lifestyle business. It's a business that will, you know, be very family friendly, and that's really what I'm looking to achieve. I'm looking to work with a small amount of companies, call it, you know, 10 to 15 companies, and offer a really exclusive service to them, and also to the candidates, of course, right? And ultimately, I think what happens as soon as I branched off and I've gone on my own, people have come out of the woodwork, and they've approached me and gone, you know, we really support you. We think it's great that you've gone on your own. And I could really feel the community love. So the 3 years or so that I've pushed into the community whilst being at Intesso, I think is slowly but surely starting to pay back. And I feel it's it's a good time, and I really appreciate all the positive feedback.
Yeah. I think there's I think there's very important few points in here to mention, Rene. I think similar, I had a conversation similar to Joe, is I think UK still has a long way to go comparing to the US in terms of entrepreneurship spirit. Because as you say, once you decide to, even though I guess cybersecurity is a bit different, because when you say when you decided to go alone, there is some help and love, but it's still kind of hard and frowned upon in UK to, you know, people usually will question you or don't believe you when you say you're going to go by yourself. Whereas in US, I think people normally ask, how can we help you? But I just picked up a few things on what you said, and I think it's very important. I think most great businesses are built when you discover there is a gap in the market of, as you say, how things been done wrongly, and you say, I can definitely do better.
Yeah, definitely.
Secondly, I think there's a very important thing what you mentioned, and I think a lot of recruiters miss one really important point is when you contact people, if they're not suitable for a specific role now, the impression you're going to leave them with is going to be very important, whether you're going to be able to talk to them again or not.
Yeah.
And people sometimes, because you're not suitable for a particular role, they'll discount you, they'll ghost you or whatever. And then, you know, at some point down the line, oh, you know, by the way, you know, a year later, let's talk. Like, no, the way you treated me last time, you think I'm going to talk to you? And that's where you know, you mentioned human centricity. I think it's very important sometimes, you know, to leave the impression of someone being better after they talk to you instead of other way. Because, you know, as I say, you're not going to place everyone.
No.
But the relationships that you're going to build, you never know where and which day you're going to turn where and who's going to be able to help you. And I think that's a very important thing. And I think partly to blame for that, and as you said, the screens, it's not only cybersecurity, not only recruitment, but I always toy this phrase, vanity metrics. People are measuring things in their head that are wrong, because I believe truly that the way you measure things, you create a culture. If you create measurement of the calls, you create a culture that people need to call instead of do the quality call, quality engagement. So you create a certain culture which does not necessarily deliver the end result.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Like I said, I come from a sales background, and I've managed teams. I've managed quite large teams, and ultimately, you know, the one thing that I always used to say to my guys and girls that used to work with me is that, you know, you can do 100 calls a day, or perceived to be doing 100 calls a day, or you can do three really good calls And those three really good calls will give you a larger scope of results than just banging out the phones to people that you're not getting any results with. Ultimately, the human-centric approach has benefited me massively because I've stayed in contact with people. And listen, I'm not claiming to be perfect. I make mistakes as well, just like everybody else. We do drop the ball. We do get busy. We do forget things. Nobody is perfect, but ultimately, the way I look at it is that I will not knowingly discard somebody for the sake of putting them one side.
Yeah.
And a good example is I worked with the head of security operations a couple of years ago, and I presented to him 9 opportunities before he eventually said, actually, you know what, this is the opportunity that I'm interested in. And I think the normal recruiter would probably present 1 opportunity, maybe 2 opportunities. And after that person had said, or the candidate had said, listen, I'm not interested, they probably would have stopped trying. And ultimately, my approach to hiring or helping candidates and clients find that perfect person to come into their business is not only finding the perfect candidate for the client, but also finding the perfect role for the candidate. So ultimately, the way I see my job is almost like a matchmaker, almost like taking 2 personalities of like the personality of the hiring manager, the personality of the candidate, and trying to see where do those personalities and skill sets overlap so that not only are they able to work well technically, but they're able to work well on a personal capacity, because hiring is, I believe, and same as what Intesso has done for my career, I believe that if you could say the same, because we've known each other for a while now, and I've followed your journey, and I know exactly how your journey's shaped out, and your journey has been shaped by hiring managers that have looked after you, and that's ultimately what happens to a lot of the more junior candidates, is that if they find themselves in an opportunity where they have a really good manager, and that manager helps them to upskill, helps them to get the right certifications, pushes them into the right roles, gives them the right advice, their career, where it would normally take 5 or 6 years, will now be pushed forward by 2 to 3 years. So it's really important to not only always look at, oh, okay, well, I'm on 50 grand now, I need to be on 70 grand to move to the next opportunity. You have to look at the person that's interviewing. You have to look at the company that you're looking to move into. Does that opportunity lend you more than the money that they're going to pay you on your basic salary? And I think, in my opinion, especially within the analyst sector, the cybersecurity analysts, the best analysts aren't always the ones that are chasing the money. They are the ones that are finding themselves in opportunities or within opportunities where they can continuously upskill. You might sometimes make a lateral move money-wise, but the experience that you'll gain under a good manager and the certifications that you will receive will bolster and it'll shoot your career forward by 3 to 5 years. So when you do decide to move on from that opportunity, you go from, let's say, 50 to 90, rather 50 to 55 or 60. And I think that's what a lot of candidates don't understand.
Yeah, I think it's as you say, it's lack of understanding, sometimes maybe lack of experience, because as you say, sometimes in a career, it's not sometimes even about, making more money. Sometimes, you have to take a step backwards to move 2 steps forward. And
Great.
I've been mentoring a lot of junior people as well. And I always say, I think, obviously, psychology plays a big part in it, nervousness when you go to interviews, especially, when you are desperate for a role. But I always say to people, you have to understand, interviews are a two-way street. You have to demand for, answers for, you have to, figure it out whether the culture, whether the correct support system is in place for you to build your career and progress. Because, there's no point going, because I think there's obviously, I talk to a lot of people, I think there's that cliff moment where people end up in a job, and if they stay there for too long, they become stagnant, and then it becomes a safety net because you are scared to step it out on your own and then try
Yeah.
something, and then people become, stuck. So yeah, as you say, sometimes you just have to experiment, sometimes you have to try new things, and yeah, you have to find people who are, I'm a big proponent, I think we discussed this previously, I you hire people on, for me, there's three levels of skills. You go for juniors, you hire them for attitude and aptitude. You teach them the technical skills. The all-rounded person has everything. But I think the important part is even sometimes, even probably for even more senior roles, you can't teach someone attitude and aptitude. If someone has bags of it, they're going to be successful because they will always seek improvement. Maybe it's a wrong way to look at it, but I find, the people who are very eager and are on a constant journey of discovery, curiosity, they'll be very successful in this field because
Yeah.
things change very fast.
Yeah. That's one of the key factors that I look for when I speak to candidates, because that eagerness to self-improve, and that willingness to improve yourself as a human being on a global scale, that's what's going to carry you forward. I always say to more senior people, especially CISO level, when you look at the way that a good CISO carries themselves, they generally are nice people. They give people the time of the day. They will help wherever they can, because they've gone through this journey. They've seen it all, and I think as an industry, if you want to be successful in the cybersecurity industry, you've got to strive to become technically astute, but also you've got to strive to become a better person, because and I've put this post out before, and I've got a bit of sort of pushback on it, and I don't mean it in a nasty way. And a lot of stuff that I put on LinkedIn is not to stir up things. It's just my personal opinion. It's all about what I believe things are, and I don't expect everybody to agree with me. I'm not ever going to be angry if somebody pushes back, right? Because we all have different views, and I think that's what makes a really good community. But ultimately, I think what we have an issue with is a lot of middle management people are too bossy and not leadership enough, if that's the right way of putting it.
It's not only that. I think just to add a couple of cents in here, I think the problem sometimes is, and I see that from my perspective, I've seen that many times in different careers, especially I guess in the big organizations. People are scared for their own position, that if someone's pushing them from behind, they're scared that this person's going to take your role. But the mindset should be, let them. If you should be striving yourself to go up or move elsewhere, because if as you just mentioned, CISOs, the really good CISO, if he knows that he's got an amazing CISO prospect, he will find a new role and let this new person come up and guide them.
Yeah.
That's how a true leadership works. People who push people down to protect their influence, those are not the leaders that you want to work under.
Agreed 100%. And I couldn't put that any better. And ultimately, what I see in the market is generally, honestly, I've worked in a few different markets in recruitment, and generally, I would say 85% of people that work within cybersecurity are generally really nice people. They are trying to make a difference. They are in the industry because they care. There are a few that are just chasing the money, but ultimately, what I have seen with those, that they get to a certain level, and then they almost sort of fizzle out, and then they start doing something else or whatever it may be, right? Yeah. And it's not my place to judge anybody or anything. If anything, I'm there to help and support and try and give advice best I can. Obviously, one thing that I'm really conscious of is that recruiters aren't very much liked, which is fine. I struggled with it the first couple of years in my recruitment career. Now I just have an attitude is, listen, if you're going to talk down to me or you're going to be otherwise with me, I just won't work with you, and that's fine. Yeah. not everybody's always going to like each other, and that's okay. But ultimately, I would like to build relationships and long-lasting relationships with people that have a similar mindset than me, because I know that regardless of what your thoughts are of recruiters and the way that a lot of us operate, a good recruiter can add a lot of value to a business. And one thing that I know that I am able to do is I know that I'm a good recruiter, and I know that I'm especially good within the SOC environment, and I can, my average placement from taking the job spec to placement with Intesso over a period of almost 3 years was 11 days. So that's from taking the job spec, going to market, and having the candidate sign the paperwork. That was my average, 11 days. I built an entire SOC. I built an entire SOC in 9 days, 14 heads. At the end of the day,
and we got experience because we know we hired people with yourself in hours. Actually, we probably broke all of the the stigma around steps and processes when we hired people after one interview, 1 hour, and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's all I try and do is when I do speak to hiring managers or businesses that are struggling to hire, is that I can give my experience over the years that I've been doing this within the market, and I can give you the feedback that works. And I can tell you, if you follow that process, the likelihood that you're going to find the right person in a timely manner is very high. But if you can continue with the process that you follow, whereas you do the first interview 1 week, and then you wait 3 to 4 weeks to do the next stage interview, and then another 2 weeks to do the third stage interview. By the time you've got to the third stage interview, I can guarantee you that the candidate's going to be off the market. The market moves so quickly. There is, regardless of what people say, there is a lack of good talent on the market. And the guys and girls that are especially very talented and very good and come across really well, they will not be on the market for a long time.
Yeah. No, I think you said it well. I think there's two different distinctions here. I think we need to call out that experienced talent, number of years plus, yes, there is a lack of, but the entry level, there's plethora of talent, and I think the problem is organizations are building the barrier to attract that junior level talent because, as we know, we've probably seen it many of times. They are either dressing up junior role with junior salary by requiring a couple of years of experience, or has unrealistic expectations of universities and da 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 da. So yeah, I think you're definitely right. Now, I just wanted to, we touched a few things that I guess people who are not, I guess, intimately familiar with the whole, recruitment. If we ask to, Rene, to debunk a few recruitment myths, what would be on top of the agenda?
There are a few. Ultimately, I don't even know where to start, to tell you the honest truth. I think I would like to start with the juniors. And I think the junior talent is one that I feel very passionate about, and I feel actually feel very sorry for a lot of these youngsters, because whether they've gone through a university or they've gone through one of these providers that provide you with certifications, etc., to get you ready to go into the market. Ultimately, I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head, is that there aren't a lot of purely entry-level roles around. And what happens is, instead of somebody, like you mentioned in the beginning of our call, somebody hiring for Aptitude and Attitude, they're going, okay, we require a minimum 1 year's experience or 2 years experience. To me, that's not an entry-level role. To me, that's let's call it a SOC analyst. That would be a 1.5 level 1.5 analyst / junior level 2, right? I know analysts that after 1 year's experience, they're at level 2. It depends on how talented they are and how quickly they're able to process technology. So I think what businesses should do, especially large enterprise businesses, that they should open up entry-level roles, like really entry level, and get guys from university or girls from university, and develop that talent upwards, and then continue to do that, because when those junior analysts are at level 3, they're going to start mentoring their own entry levels, and that cycle will continue. And that's the only way that we're really going to continue to build cybersecurity within the UK, because otherwise what will happen is your junior talent will stop going to university because there's no entry-level jobs for them. They'll start following different routes. They might go into coding or engineering or whatever it may be, right?
Yeah.
And the only way that you're really going to protect your market is to ensure that the junior guys that are coming out of university or out of the certification, the providers, have a place to go to. And ultimately, I know it's really difficult in small environments, and I know it's difficult when you're only a small team, because you need somebody to hit the ground running. But to be honest, if you're a team of 40 or 50, there's no reason why you can't hire at least 10% into your SOC as junior candidates, and build those up into becoming really, really talented level 2s.
I think if you want to, you can do it. I've recently hired, well, not recently, it's been about almost a year now, but I've hired a person into a team of 6 who's been completely novice and never worked in. He was 16 years electrician, and he had first cybersecurity role, and he's been a tremendous person. He's performed up and above expectations, and I just promoted him a couple of weeks ago, so he's been amazing. And I actually wanted to, because I had a similar discussion with someone, and actually it really brought some ideas to me. Do you think that in some ways the lack of entry-level positions are in a way to blame, because lots of organizations are moving away from building help desks and outsourcing that first level IT function that used to be the gateway into building IT talent? Because basically what used to happen, you weren't afraid to hire help desk people, IT help desk people, even if they are completely green, because that would be a segue technology skills building, and then they could go into IT ops, IT engineering, security. There was a few segues to grow these people. But it seems that most organizations doing that sort of help desk roles are becoming outsourced, third-party outsourced, third country outsourced. And it seems it's reducing that segue. And I think sort of apprenticeships it should be the way, but I think organizations are still hesitant to invest in that area. And I think that's in a way probably reducing the number of opportunities for junior talent to come in.
I agree 100%. I think from personal experience and speaking to companies that have had security operations centers within the UK, they've outsourced the talent abroad. They've got rid of their staff in the UK because it's a way for them to save money. So your talent, then you're not having there's a lack of opportunities for the talent to grow themselves. But I think there are companies that are up and coming. There are people and hiring managers with the right mindset that are investing into these young talented individuals, whether they be career changers or university leavers. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that there's enough being done around that. Yeah. I think there could be more. Could be more done locally, and I think ultimately what the companies are missing out on this is that a lot of these entry-level people would happily work for a low wage because they would do whatever they need to do to get into the industry. They're not driven by finances. They're driven by wanting to upskill and wanting to learn and wanting to get themselves within the environment. So you're getting a really good resource for a little bit of money. And I would probably recommend, instead of bringing on 2 senior guys, bring on 1 senior guy and 2 juniors for the same wage. Yeah. And develop them and give them a clear path to upskilling and also give them a clear path to earn more money. Don't just bring them in, put him on a wage of 30 grand and leave him on a wage of 30 grand for 2 years, because ultimately, what you've got to understand, the general tenure for a security operations analyst within the UK ranges between 12 months and 18 months. So what's happening with a lot of businesses is they're losing these talent because they've got nowhere to go. They don't have anywhere to move to. There's no room for them to go anywhere. And I understand in a small team it's really difficult, but ultimately, people businesses should think about these career paths for younger or more junior candidates, so that they have a clear path to become really strong talent in the future. Because ultimately, when you get to level 3 and you're looking for a strong level 3, it's not easy to find those candidates.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is ultimately is because we're not developing the more junior candidates correctly.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. We touched a bit before we started the call. The industry seems this year has been really sort of a testing time. It's been up and down. Do you think is there anything you can attribute? What's the current sort of challenges in cybersecurity sort of recruitment landscape?
I think we've been facing challenges for the last 18 months, to be honest. From a recruiter's perspective, a lot of companies do not use external agency because they need to save money. The internal guys struggle because they're not just cybersecurity focused, right? So they do across the board. So depending on how big the business is or how many hires they need to do across their business, it could be 100, could be 200, and ultimately, I think it's a real talent to be able to spot really good talent within cybersecurity. And I don't think that just anybody is able to do that. You might get lucky once or twice to find good talent within cyber, but generally, if you don't know what you're looking for, how are you going to find it? It's like that general rule. It's like, if you don't understand what you're reading, if you don't understand the person's experience, if you don't understand the way that he communicates, because an analyst communicates differently to a business development manager. Those are two totally different personalities, and they work in two totally different, sectors or skill sets. And ultimately, I think to get the best talent within the market, the person that's supplying that talent needs to understand what that person does on a day-to-day. Me, for instance, I've done like SIM certifications. I've played on the SIM, and I've gone and I've spoken in like to analysts and ask them questions about their day to day. And you know what I mean? I don't just pick up the phone and go, okay, well, see, you've got so and so certification. I'm able to hold the conversation. I know what they do on a day to day basis. I know what their job entails. And I think and it doesn't, not just recruitment. I think any job that you do, if you don't understand the end goal, regardless of the opportunity that you're in, you're never going to be able to do your job correctly. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles that we have within recruitment, whether that be internal or external, is that the recruiters that are filling these roles don't have an understanding of what they're looking for. Hence, it's taking 6 to 9 months to fill those roles, and on standard, that's not it's not right.
I guess it's not even that understanding. I still get, we're probably seen there, but I think probably some people, obviously, as you probably know, as you just kind of mentioned, companies try to save money, so even they outsource even recruitment to third world country, and they think, oh, it's very easy, because I get LinkedIn messages that it's a Boolean expression made by a keyword that's found in your basic description, because on my list of experiences there is a word mentioned WAF. So therefore, I'm a perfect candidate for WAF engineer, and then you get a whole spiel, and you're like, really?
Yeah.
How do you think you're going to hire someone if you're just looking for a keyword matches? So I guess if we segue into that trend, Rene, what do you think is the biggest mistake currently that companies make when hiring for people?
From a what I think the biggest issue is they combining jobs into one. So um, they're taking an analyst role and an engineer role. They're combining the two into one, and they're paying a singular salary. So
Yeah.
they would, let's say they're looking for an analyst per se, but they want that analyst to be able to do engineering role or engineering work whilst only being an analyst and only paying them 50 grand a year. I look at a lot of job specs and I go, this is 3 or 4 jobs in one. How do you expect me to find, firstly, a person that's willing to do that? And secondly, you're probably 15 to 20 grand under market value. And thirdly, your expectation for techies to be on site, 3 days a week, especially engineers and that kind of stuff. If you're looking to get the best talent on the market, you've got to give something somewhere. And if you're paying the best in the market and you're willing to pay above and beyond, those engineers will happily go on site because their transport will be paid, their travel will be paid, all of that kind of stuff will be done, and they would happily do that. No candidate out there is unreasonable, but I will not present something to somebody if it's not financially viable,
No.
if it's going to mess up with their day-to-day life, whether that be family, if they're going to have to commute 3 hours a day. I don't want to commute 3 hours a day. I shouldn't expect somebody else to do that. And I think the biggest problem that some companies have, some recruiters have, is that they can't put themselves in that person's shoes. Ultimately, just, would you want to do that? No, I don't want to do that. I don't want to commute 3 hours a day. I don't want to go to the office 5 days a week if I don't have to. All of those sorts of things. Then you find candidates that have become desperate and they might have been on the market for a little longer than they wanted to be, and ultimately they take those roles, but they're not going to stay there.
No.
And that's where the problem comes in, because then you find that revolving door, right? Because you're not actually attracting candidates that want to be there. You're attracting candidates that are taking the jobs because they don't have a choice.
And I think, as you rightly say, I think sometimes companies, I don't know why, but people like, I don't know whether for lack of experience or what, but they're really missing the point. Like, yes, you can hire a person on a cheap, but the amount of hiring you're going to need to do to keep replacing that revolving door is you're going to spend above and beyond of what you should have paid to the right person. Because I don't know why, but as we earlier mentioned, like, for some reason, companies and some recruitment companies as well, they very rarely measure retention, which is, I think, is very important metric in cybersecurity, because it's not about just putting bums on seats. It's making sure that those bums stay on those seats, and how you're gonna. Obviously, it's a recruiter. It's also the company, and then you have to have, obviously, retention, strategies and things like that, and make sure that people are happy in the roles. But just hiring someone on the cheap and getting someone because they're desperate, as you say, they'll be looking around. They'll be on a job to pay the bills, but they'll be looking around to actually get paid what they're worth.
Yeah, I think just to touch on that, and I think the way that the best way you retain your staff is to continue to upskill them. I'm going to carry on about this. Give them the opportunity to upskill, give them the opportunity to do certifications, but also build a good culture in your business. Don't build a culture of micromanagement. Don't build a culture of KPIs. Don't build a culture. People don't mind to do KPIs, but set realistic KPIs. Like a lot of SOCs are doing 10-minute or 15-minute tickets, and those guys can't do their job properly. These are people that are really analytical. They love what they do. They want to do their job to the best of their ability, and to do a ticket in 10 minutes. You're not getting the best out of that person. So ultimately, give your staff the opportunity to be the best versions of themselves. Make them feel like they are special, and you'll retain your staff. If you think about it, ultimately it's not difficult. But ultimately, what happens is people become really busy, and like you said, that revolving door keeps revolving, and the culture is not right. The breakdown, probably hybrid, is probably not right. The opportunities to grow within the business is not right, and you'll probably find that you probably have one or two toxic managers in your business that are driving people out the door. And I've seen this in many businesses where they bring in new people to run their business, and as soon as the new person comes in, 30 go out the back door, because the culture has changed, and they just don't want to be in that business anymore.
I think people miss the point sometimes, and I think there's another point that actually I didn't mention earlier about attitude and aptitude, but bringing up one bad apple can spoil the rest of your fruits. So you have to be mindful of what not only what caliber of talent person you bring in, but what type of personality you bring it in, and how that's going to gel within the team dynamics. Because as I kind of say, one bad person can spoil the whole experience for everyone, and you never want to get into that point. I guess we kind of focusing and talking a lot about companies. So on the flip side, now, what do you see often people who are looking for roles making mistakes while not being successful for interviews, or not being able, or not successfully landing roles? Because I see, sometimes, people obviously posting, they're becoming desperate, looking for roles, because sometimes, it takes I think it looks like its time is increasing for people to be able to land the roles, even though they might be good.
Yeah. If I could give anybody any advice, the best way to find an opportunity is find yourself maybe 2 or 3 good recruiters, reach out to them, and reach out in a nice way. Be polite. You know what I mean? The way that you approach, especially a recruiter, is going to take you a long way. By applying for every role under the sun, that's not doing yourself any favors. Basically, what you're doing is you are spamming your CV to every company out there. It's not the way to do things. They go into ATS systems. They fall into big black holes. So basically, what you've done is, if you had gone through a recruiter, that recruiter would probably key sell you into that hiring manager. They were like, listen, I've met this guy or girl, really talented, got a lot of talent, massive scope for growth, etc. You go and apply for that role via ATS system, and they might have put in the minimum requirement 2 years experience. You've got 1 year and 9 months experience, so your CV gets kicked out the back.
Yep.
So you're not going to revisit that opportunity again, are you? Because now I phone you as a recruiter and I go, hey, George, I have this opportunity with so-and-so company. And you're like, oh, sorry, I've already applied for that. But really, you've not applied. You have applied, but nobody has seen your CV.
No.
It's in a deep, dark hole. Nobody's ever looked at it. The only time they're going to look at it is if we go through the back door, the hiring manager hires you, and then they go on the ATS system and go, oh, this person's actually applied. Yep. So ultimately, my recommendation would be find yourself 2 or 3 really good recruiters, people that know the industry, people that have been working in the industry for a long time, and human-centric people. Don't work with assholes, excuse my language, but don't waste your time with people that aren't invested in you as a person. And if you take I always say, if you approach me in a nice manner, and I will always keep you updated with any opportunities that become available. I might not have an opportunity for you immediately, but that could change tomorrow. It could change next week, and I will always let you know. Listen, I've just got 2 new analyst roles in. This is what I've got. This is how much it's paying. Are you interested? And a simple yay or no will suffice. If it's not enough money, that's cool. In 2 weeks' time, I get something in that pays more money, and that's the way I like to operate. I always have passive candidates that reach out to me and go, Rene, do you have anything available? I am looking at the moment. This is what I'm looking for in terms of salary. These are my expectations. This is what I would like to drive towards in the next couple of years. I might be an analyst now. I want to be an engineer in 3 or 4 years' time.
Right.
Those are the guys that I happily work with, or girls. But if you're going to approach me in a rude manner, or you're just not going to be nice, then I'm just going to delete it. I don't care if I can make money out of you. It's just my piece is worth more than money, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget, everyone's at the end of the day, everyone's a human. The recruiters are humans too. So, it's, I don't understand sometimes why people think they are entitled to, or, everyone's busy as well. You can't expect, get a reply within 5 minutes, and you can't expect to be, treating people in a certain way and expect that it's going to be acceptable. So I think it's absolutely right.
I think it's ultimately just to touch on that. I think it's our own fault. I think it's recruiters' own fault, and I'm not passing blame. I don't ever want to say that it's what I don't ever want to make it is us against them sort of thing. I think people are individuals, right? Ultimately, you have some bad apples in terms of candidates. You have some bad apples in terms of recruiters, and you've got to take it for what it is. And ultimately, what you've got to do is you've got to take that individual process that you've gone through that you've not enjoyed and just go, okay, I'm probably not going to work with that guy again, but that's okay. Let me see if I can find somebody else that could be a better fit for me.
Yeah. And I think just, it's a perfect segue. And I guess to round it off, how do you think, Rene, sort of next year or two, how sort of recruitment, cybersecurity recruitment will change or evolve? Do you see, I guess, AI probably not, but I guess everyone's talking about AI. Does that come in any way to disrupt the industry? What do you see in terms of trends in the near future?
Personally, I think that a lot of people will leave recruitment because they've been struggling for a long time. I think that the people that stay within recruitment are the ones that are good, and they will continue to be good. The market is changing. It's changed. The last 18 months has been really difficult. I can feel that there's been a shift in the market. The market is definitely starting to change. Companies are starting to open up again to agencies. Companies are starting to hire again. And ultimately, teams need to be built. There's a massive investment into cybersecurity over the next couple of years. I don't think that cybersecurity will be going. It's just going to continue to go up. There's going to be loads of opportunities for loads of people. The AI, I think, will be a benefit to recruitment and hopefully make life easier, perhaps for the internal teams. But ultimately, I think that there are a certain few things that need to be achieved on a personal basis within recruitment. I don't think it will ever become an automated system. There's just too many variables. Sales is pretty simple. You've got a product, you've got a buyer, put those together, cool. Recruitment is a human aspect in between. People change their mind, circumstances change. You know what I mean? There's so many different variables within recruitment, and ultimately, that's why I think a lot of recruiters don't last within the industry, because it's honestly, it's a roller coaster. It's an up and down. You can be at a high at one stage and you've just made 2 placements, and then the next day those 2 placements will go, sorry, we've taken counter offers, and then you have to start all over again. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of variables in recruitment. It's a really tough industry. It's not for everybody, and I think because it's been so hard over the last, let's call it 18 months, 2 years, a lot of people won't stay within the industry. It will become I think a more intimate environment, especially within the cyber industry. And I think the people that tend to stay will have a more human focused approach. And I think the people that come in after that will be coached and developed to be exactly the way that the ones that have made it stayed in the industry are about.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, Rene, I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you very much for coming along, sharing your ideas, your expertise. It's always good to, to hear and understand. Sometimes obviously, I guess people, around the industry, they make up their own ideas without understanding, how this recruitment thing works. So, it's always good
Yeah,
to, I guess, share ideas and showcase, people that there are good recruiters. There are people who are willing to help people, and how they
of course,
operate
yes.
on what level.
Yeah, and generally, and just a takeaway from it, I think, whether you're a candidate that's had a tough time working with recruiters or a client, don't generalize. You know what I mean? Ultimately, I know I'm not the only recruiter out there. I know there's loads of others that are really good, and between us, those recruiters, we have a chat about things, and we try and change the industry. We try and keep a positive mindset to try and have a better process for candidates and clients, right? So yeah, it's not all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Ultimately, just keep a positive mindset, and ultimately, let's work together. It's not an us and they thing. If you've had a bad experience with the recruiter, it's not the end of the world. There are other people that are really good, and same as me. If I've had a bad experience with a candidate, doesn't mean all candidates are bad, and that's an isolated incident, and I'll take it as that. And yeah, I try not to whine about it too much, but ultimately, I am grateful for being able to work in such a great sector and such a great environment, and people within this industry has been really supportive. So yeah, thank you very